Billionaire invites a black homeless boy to drive his car as a joke. He didn't know he was an expert. The laughter came first. It rippled through the glass front plaza like a careless echo, sharp and dismissive, the kind of laughter that didn't bother to hide its cruelty. Executives in tailored suits stood in small clusters outside the towering corporate building, their attention drawn to an absurd scene unfolding near the curb. A billionaire, one of the most powerful men in the city, was smiling broadly as he dangled a set of car keys in the air, the metallic glint catching the afternoon sunlight. In front of him stood a black homeless boy, no more than 7 years old, thin shoulders slightly hunched beneath the weight of a large, translucent garbage bag slung over his back. The bag bulged with crushed cans, scraps of cardboard, and bits of discarded plastic, tied tightly at the top with a knot that looked like it had been redone many times. The boy's light gray t-shirt was old, visibly dirty, stained with dark smudges and patches that spoke of long days on the streets. His blue denim jeans were worn thin at the knees, faded and marked with dirt, clinging to his slim child's frame. On his feet were dark sneakers, gray-black tones with white soles well used, the kind that had walked far more miles than any child's shoes should. The boy's head was bowed, his short, straight, light blonde hair slightly messy, falling unevenly across his forehead. His face, fair-skinned, smudged with grime, was tense, his eyebrows lowered, his mouth pressed into a tight line as if he were holding back words, or anger, or both. He did not look at the crowd. He did not look at the laughing executives. His eyes were fixed on the keys. Behind the billionaire, gleaming like a jewel in the city's dull afternoon, sat the car, a luxury Mercedes-Benz sedan, metallic red paint polished to a mirror-like shine. The hood was smooth and glossy, reflecting the sky and the faces of onlookers, the iconic three-pointed star emblem standing proudly at the center. It was the kind of car people photographed, envied, whispered about. The billionaire himself looked every part the role. He appeared to be in his late 70s, perhaps early 80s, average height with a slightly stocky build that spoke of comfort rather than excess. His fair skin was smooth for his age, his white-gray hair neatly cut short, thinning at the temples with a receding hairline. He was clean-shaven, his jawline sharp and well-maintained. He wore a navy blue blazer, perfectly tailored, formal and wrinkle-free, over a light blue button-up shirt with the collar neatly pressed. No tie, casual confidence. Everything about him said power, wealth, control. And amusement, well, the billionaire said lightly, holding out the keys toward the boy. Ever driven a car before? A few people chuckled. Someone covered their mouth, trying not to laugh too loudly. Others didn't bother. The boy didn't answer right away. From the outside, it looked like hesitation. Fear, maybe. After all, what homeless child would dare touch a billionaire's car? What child like him would even know where to begin? But inside the boy, something else stirred. His fingers twitched slightly at his side. His jaw tightened. The laughter around him didn't sound new, it sounded familiar. It sounded like every day. Like every time someone saw his dirty clothes and empty pockets and decided they already knew his story. The billionaire leaned forward just a little, still smiling. "Come on," he said, his voice carrying a teasing edge. "It's just a joke. Sit inside. Press a few buttons. Give us a good laugh." The words "just a joke" hung in the air, heavy and sharp. The boy finally lifted his head. His eyes met the billionaire's for the first time. There was no fear in them. There was something else, something steady, focused, and far too serious for a child his age. Slowly, deliberately, the boy reached out. His small hand closed around the key fob, the plastic cool against his palm. For a brief moment, the billionaire's smile faltered, just slightly, as if he hadn't expected the boy to actually take them. The crowd leaned in. The boy stepped toward the car. Each step was calm, controlled. The garbage bag shifted on his shoulder, rustling softly as he moved. He reached the driver's side door, paused, and then without fumbling, without hesitation, pressed the unlock button. The car responded instantly. A soft click. The mirrors adjusted. The door handle presented itself. The laughter stopped. The boy opened the door and climbed in, his movements careful but confident. He settled into the driver's seat, adjusting his position with small, practiced motions. His hands hovered over the steering wheel, then rested on it, light but sure. The billionaire's smile was gone now. His eyebrows knit together, his lips parting slightly as confusion crept across his face. Around him, the executives exchanged glances, the mood shifting from mockery to uncertainty. Inside the car, the boy inhaled slowly. The interior smelled of leather and polish. The dashboard lights glowed softly. To anyone else, it might have felt overwhelming. To the boy, it felt familiar. He placed his foot exactly where it needed to be. His fingers brushed the controls, not randomly, not curiously, but knowingly. The engine started with a smooth, powerful hum. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The billionaire took a step back, his eyes widening just a fraction. This, he muttered under his breath, this wasn't part of the joke. The boy looked straight ahead, his face still serious, still focused. His small hands adjusted the wheel, checking the alignment, the mirrors, the settings, things no one had told him to do. Things he already knew. And as the car idled calmly beneath him, one undeniable truth began to settle over everyone watching. This was no accident. This boy wasn't guessing. He wasn't pretending. He knew exactly what he was doing. And in that moment, as the billionaire stared at the child he had invited into his car as a joke, a quiet realization began to dawn, one that would soon turn laughter into shock, and arrogance into something dangerously close to awe. The engine's low, controlled hum cut through the plaza like a held breath. No one laughed now. The executives who had been smiling moments ago stood frozen, their expressions caught somewhere between disbelief and discomfort. A few instinctively reached for their phones, then stopped, unsure whether they were witnessing a joke gone wrong or something far more serious. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the city noise, passing cars, distant horns, footsteps seemed to fade behind the presence of that red Mercedes-Benz idling calmly. Beneath a child's hands, the billionaire stared at the boy through the windshield. His shocked and startled expression deepened. His eyes widened, mouth slightly open, head tilting back just enough to betray the crack forming in his confidence. He had expected clumsy fumbling, a stall, panic, maybe even tears. Instead, he saw precision. Inside the car, the boy adjusted the seat just a notch forward, his small frame settling perfectly into place. His fingers moved to the steering wheel at a measured angle, left hand steady, right hand relaxed. His posture straightened, no longer hunched like a child carrying the weight of the streets, but upright. Alert, focused. The garbage bag slid slightly off his shoulder and rested against the seat. Its gray translucent plastic revealing dark shapes inside bottles, wrappers, scraps of discarded life. It didn't bother him. He didn't brush it away. It was part of him, as familiar as the worn fabric of his light gray t-shirt. Clinging loosely to his slim build, the billionaire cleared his throat. "All right," he said, forcing a chuckle that sounded hollow even to his own ears. That's enough. You can turn it off now." The boy didn't respond. Instead, he checked the mirrors again, left, right, rear, his eyes moving quickly, efficiently. His face remained intense, eyebrows lowered, lips slightly parted as if counting steps in his head. He pressed a control on the dashboard, lowering the window just enough to let in the soft daylight and city air. A ripple of unease spread through the crowd. One of the executives whispered, "How does he know all that?" Another shook his head slowly. No way. He's too young. The billionaire took a step closer to the hood of the car, the glossy surface reflecting his navy blue blazer and pale blue shirt. The Mercedes-Benz emblem gleamed between them like a dividing line. Wealth on one side, poverty on the other. Kid, the billionaire said more sharply now. This isn't funny anymore. The boy finally turned his head. Their eyes met again, up close. The contrast was striking. The boy's fair skin marked with dirt and exhaustion. His light blonde hair uneven and slightly messy. The billionaire's clean, composed appearance, every detail polished. But in that moment, the power between them shifted in a way no one could quite explain. The boy spoke for the first time. "Do you want me to move it?" he asked quietly, "or park it?" The words landed like a dropped glass. A collective gasp swept through the onlookers. The billionaire blinked, once, twice. You know how to park it?" he asked, disbelief creeping into his voice. The boy nodded just slightly. "I know how to drive," he said. "This model too." Silence. Somewhere in the background, a car passed, its tires hissing softly on pavement. A breeze stirred the leaves of the trees lining the street, sunlight filtering through their branches and casting warm highlights across the scene. The billionaire laughed again, but this time it was different, shorter, uncertain. "That's impossible," he said. "You're a child." The boy didn't argue. He shifted the gear selector with careful control, his movements slow enough to be deliberate, fast enough to show confidence. The car rolled forward just inches, smooth as silk, then stopped, perfectly aligned, perfectly balanced. No jerk. No hesitation. The billionaire's mouth fell open. One of the executives stepped forward. "Sir," he said quietly, "maybe we should." But the billionaire raised a hand, silencing him. His eyes never left the boy. "Where did you learn that?" he asked, his voice lower now, stripped of mockery. The boy looked down at the steering wheel, his fingers tracing its edge for a brief moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried something deeper than anger, something heavy. "My mom used to clean cars," he said. "Rich people's cars. She showed me. I watched. I practiced when no one was looking." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. The billionaire swallowed. "And the rest?" he pressed. "The controls. The systems." The boy shrugged. "Some people throw away magazines, manuals. I read them." A murmur spread through the executives, astonishment mixing with shame. The billionaire took a step back, his polished shoes scraping softly against the pavement. For the first time since the boy had taken the keys, the billionaire looked small. The joke was gone. In its place stood a question he hadn't expected to face. How many times had he looked at children like this and seen nothing? The boy's foot eased off the pedal. He placed the car back in park and turned off the engine. The sudden silence pressing in on everyone like a held breath finally released. He opened the door and stepped out, the garbage bag shifting back onto his shoulder. He held the keys out, his small hand steady. "Here," he said. For a moment, the billionaire didn't move. Then, slowly, he reached out and took the keys back, his fingers brushing the boy's. Lingering just a second longer than necessary, something had changed. And everyone standing there could feel it, because the billionaire hadn't just lost a joke, he had just lost the certainty that wealth defined worth, and he was about to learn just how wrong he had been. Asterisk. The keys felt heavier in the billionaire's hand than they should have, not because of the metal, but because of what they now represented. He stared at them for a long moment, then at the boy standing quietly in front of him, the large gray translucent garbage bag still slung over his shoulder, its dark contents pressing against his back like a second spine. The child's light gray t-shirt hung loosely on his slim frame, stained and worn, the fabric marked by a life that had never been gentle. His blue denim jeans were faded at the knees, dirt ground into the seams. His dark sneakers, gray-black with white solace, were scuffed and tired, but firmly planted. The crowd remained silent. No laughter. No whispers. Only watching. The billionaire finally spoke, his voice softer now, stripped of performance. "What's your name?" The boy hesitated. Names mattered. On the street, they could invite questions, attention, trouble. "Evan," he said at last. "Evan," the billionaire repeated, testing the sound of it, as if anchoring the moment. "How old are you?" "7," the boy replied. 7. The word rippled through the onlookers like a shockwave. 7 years old, and he had just handled a luxury Mercedes-Benz with the ease of a professional driver. The billionaire exhaled slowly and straightened his navy blue blazer, the crisp fabric suddenly feeling too stiff against his chest. His light blue shirt collar caught the daylight as he glanced around at the executives who had been laughing moments earlier. No one met his eyes. "Everyone," he said quietly, "give us a moment." No one argued. The executives stepped back, forming a loose semicircle at a respectful distance. They pretended to check phones, to talk among themselves, but every eye remained fixed on the boy and the man facing each other in front of the gleaming silver car. The billionaire crouched slightly so he wasn't towering over Evan. "Do you live nearby?" he asked. Evan shook his head. "We move. My mom and me." The billionaire nodded. "Is she close?" Another pause. "She's working," Evan said. "Cleaning offices. Should come back later." The billionaire's jaw tightened. "How long have you been on your own today?" Evan shrugged again, a gesture too practiced for a child. "Since morning." It was midday. Sunlight reflected off the Mercedes hood, bright and unforgiving. The billionaire glanced at the garbage bag. "And that?" "Recycling," Evan said simply. "Bottles mostly. If I fill it, we can eat tonight." The words landed harder than any accusation. The billionaire leaned back on his heels, suddenly aware of how warm the day felt, how clean the air smelled, how absurd it was that only minutes ago he had laughed. He stood up slowly. "Would you?" he said carefully, "like something to eat?" Evan's eyes flickered, not with excitement, but with calculation. Hunger made you careful. Offers often came with conditions. "Why?" Evan asked. The billionaire didn't answer right away. Because he didn't know. Because the truth that he wanted to quiet the growing weight in his chest felt inadequate. Because "I owe you an apology," he said finally. That earned him a look. Evan studied the man in front of him, the white-haired, clean-shaven face, the fine lines around eyes that had seen power and comfort for decades, the tailored navy blazer, immaculate, the posture of someone used to being obeyed. "You laughed at me," Evan said. The billionaire didn't deny it. "I did. And everyone watched," Evan continued, his voice steady but tight. "Yes. And if I didn't know how to drive," the boy said, "you'd still be laughing." The billionaire closed his eyes briefly. "You're right," he said. "I would be." Silence stretched between them. Then Evan nodded once. "Okay," he said. "Food's fine." The billionaire gestured toward the building behind them, glass, steel, and quiet authority. "There's a cafe inside. We can sit." Evan followed, keeping a careful distance, the garbage bag still over his shoulder. Inside, the air was cool and calm. The contrast from the street was jarring. Polished floors, soft lighting, the muted hum of wealth. People stared. A homeless child with dirt-streaked clothes and a trash bag did not belong here. But no one stopped them. They sat at a small table near the window. A server approached, hesitated, then looked to the billionaire, who nodded. "Anything he wants," the billionaire said. Evan ordered simply. Soup, bread, water. When the food arrived, he ate quietly but quickly, like someone who knew meals could disappear at any moment. The billionaire watched him, hands folded. His expression unreadable. "You're smart," he said after a while. Evan didn't look up. "Smart doesn't buy food." "No," the billionaire agreed. "But it can open doors." Evan paused. "Spoon hovering. Doors close too," he said. The billionaire nodded again. Then, after a moment, he asked the question that had been building since the moment the engine started. "How many times," he said, "have people underestimated you?" Evan looked up. His eyebrows lowered. His mouth tightened. "All the time," he said. Outside the window, the red and silver reflections of cars passed by. Inside, something irreversible had begun. Because the billionaire was no longer looking at a homeless boy. He was looking at a mirror, one that reflected every assumption he had ever made. And, for the first time in a very long time, he didn't like what he saw. The cafe had begun to empty. But the tension at the small table near the window remained thick and unmoving. Evan finished the last piece of bread and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. He did not ask for more. He never did. Hunger taught restraint as much as it taught desperation. The billionaire watched every movement. "You didn't ask for dessert," he said. Evan shrugged. "This is enough." The billionaire leaned back in his chair, studying the boy more closely, now not as a novelty, not as a story to tell later, but as a person. The light from the window caught Evan's face, highlighting the smudges of dirt on his cheeks, the tension in his jaw. The eyes that looked older than 7 had any right to be. "Who taught you to drive?" the billionaire asked. Evan stiffened. "No one," he said. The billionaire raised an eyebrow. "No one doesn't teach someone how to handle a luxury sedan." Evan looked down at the table. His fingers traced a faint scratch in the polished wood. "My mom," he said quietly. "She used to drive cars for rich people, valet, before she got sick." The billionaire's posture shifted. "Sick how?" Evan hesitated, then shrugged again. "She gets tired. A lot. Sometimes she can't stand for long." "And you learned from watching her?" Evan nodded. "And practicing?" The billionaire frowned. "Practicing where?" "Empty lots," Evan said. "Early mornings. Before people wake up." There it was again, that quiet discipline, that invisible grind no one applauded. The billionaire looked away for a moment, toward the glass walls of his building. His reflection stared back at him, a man who had built an empire, solved problems with money, and laughed at a child because it felt safe to do so. He turned back. "You know," he said slowly, "I have professional drivers who couldn't do what you did." Evan didn't react. Compliments were just words. Words didn't last. The billionaire took a breath. "I want to make you an offer." Evan's shoulders tensed immediately. "No," he said. The billionaire blinked. "You don't even know what it is." "I know offers," Evan replied. "They come with strings." The billionaire nodded. "You're right. This one does too. But they're honest strings." Evan studied him. "Like what?" "I want to help you and your mother," the billionaire said. "Food, a place to stay, school." Evan's eyes hardened. "Why?" The question landed squarely. "Because," the billionaire said carefully, "I failed you today. And because I don't want to be the kind of man who walks away from that." Evan looked unconvinced. "And what do you get?" the boy asked. The billionaire hesitated. That question was harder than any negotiation he'd ever handled. "I get," he said slowly, "a chance to be better than I was an hour ago." Silence stretched between them. Outside, a group of executives watched through the glass, pretending not to stare. Evan finally spoke. "My mom doesn't like charity." "Neither do I," the billionaire replied. "So let's not call it that." He reached into his pocket and placed a business card on the table, sliding it toward Evan, but not too close. "I run a foundation," he said. We support families who are overlooked. You wouldn't owe me anything. No interviews. No photos. No stories. Evan didn't touch the card. What if I say no? He asked. The billionaire nodded. Then I respect it. What if you forget us tomorrow? The billionaire met his gaze. I won't. Evan searched the man's face, looking for cracks, for lies. He had learned early how to read people. Most adults underestimated that too. After a long moment, Evan picked up the card. I'll show this to my mom, he said. She decides. The billionaire smiled faintly. That's exactly how it should be. They stood together near the exit. Outside, the sunlight had softened. The silver Mercedes waited at the curb, pristine as ever, but it no longer felt like the center of attention. The billionaire reached into his pocket again and pulled out the car keys. He held them out, then stopped. Not today, he said gently, tucking them back. But someday, if you want. I'll teach you properly. Evan nodded once. Okay. As the boy stepped away, the garbage bag shifting on his shoulder, the billionaire watched him go, not with amusement, not with pity, but with respect. And behind the glass walls of power and privilege, something had changed. Not in the world, but in one man. And sometimes, that was where change had to begin. Evan's mother sat on the edge of the thin mattress, coughing softly into her sleeve. The small room they shared smelled faintly of detergent and street dust, a scent Evan had grown used to. He placed the paper bag of leftover food carefully on the crate that served as their table. You eat? She asked. Yes, Evan said. A lot. She smiled weakly. Good. He hesitated, then pulled the business card from his pocket. It looked out of place in the room-thick paper, clean edges, a name printed in calm black letters. A man gave me this, Evan said. His mother looked at the card, then at him. What kind of man? The car man, Evan replied. The one with the red car. Her expression tightened. The billionaire? Evan nodded. He wasn't laughing at the end. She studied his face, searching for fear, excitement, shame, anything that might tell her what this meant. And what does he want? To help, Evan said. Food, school, a place. Maybe. She closed her eyes briefly. Years of disappointment had taught her caution. Help often came with judgment. Or control. What does he want back? She asked. Nothing, Evan said. Then, more honestly, he said nothing. She exhaled slowly. People who say that usually want something they don't say. I thought that too, Evan admitted. But he listened. She turned the card over in her fingers. The name was famous. She knew it. Everyone did. You didn't promise him anything? She asked. No, Evan said quickly. I said you decide. That made her pause. She looked at her son, not just small and thin, but steady, grounded, protective. You did good, she said quietly. The next morning, she made the call. 2 days later, a black car, modest, unbranded, waited outside the shelter. No cameras, no crowd. Just a woman from the foundation, warm-eyed and calm, who spoke to Evan's mother like an equal. The process was slow. Paperwork, questions, medical appointments. A small apartment near a school. Nothing rushed. Nothing forced. The billionaire did not appear. Weeks passed. Evan started school. He sat in the back at first, silent, watching. The teachers noticed how quickly he learned, how numbers made sense to him, how machines fascinated him. When the class visited a science center, Evan stayed behind long after the others wandered off. Taking apart a simple engine display and putting it back together perfectly. At night, he still woke up sometimes, listening for sounds that no longer meant danger. His mother slept better too. Her cough softened. She smiled more. One afternoon, a letter arrived. It was handwritten. Evan, I hope school is treating you well. I didn't want to intrude, but I wanted you to know I haven't forgotten. There's a small driving simulator at one of our learning centers. No pressure. If you're curious, you're welcome. Evan read it twice. The following Saturday, he stood inside a bright room filled with screens and machines. The billionaire stood nearby, not in a suit this time, but in a simple jacket, hands in pockets. You came, he said. Evan nodded. I was curious. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. Evan sat at the simulator, his hands steady on the controls. Within minutes, instructors were whispering. The billionaire watched silently, a faint smile forming not of pride, but of understanding. This wasn't a joke anymore. This was potential. And for the first time in his life, Evan wasn't being asked to survive. He was being allowed to grow. The simulator room was quiet except for the low hum of machines and the soft click of Evan's hands moving with confidence. What surprised everyone wasn't just how fast he adapted, but how calm he remained. No hesitation. No nervousness. As if he had been waiting for a space like this his whole life. One of the instructors leaned toward the billionaire and whispered, "He doesn't drive like a child learning. He drives like someone remembering." The billionaire didn't reply. His eyes stayed fixed on Evan. When the session ended, Evan stepped away from the simulator, unsure of what came next. The billionaire approached slowly, careful not to overwhelm him. "You know," the man said, "when I invited you to drive my car that day, I thought I was being generous. Or clever." He paused, then smiled faintly. "Turns out, I was being small." Evan looked down. "I didn't mind." "I know," the billionaire replied. "That's the part that bothers me." They walked outside together. The red luxury car was parked in the sunlight, gleaming. For the first time, it looked less like a symbol of wealth and more like just a machine. One Evan understood deeply. "I'm not here to make you a story," the billionaire said gently. "I don't want headlines. I don't want praise. I want to offer you choices." Evan's mother stood nearby, listening carefully. "There's a scholarship program," the billionaire continued. "Education, housing support, mentors. No contracts. No obligations to me. If one day you decide you don't want anything to do with my world, that's fine." Evan's mother asked the question that mattered most. "And if he fails?" The billionaire met her eyes. "Then he fails safely. Like every child should be allowed to." Silence settled between them, not heavy, but full. Months passed. Evan changed, slowly and naturally. Not into someone else, but into more of himself. He learned physics before most kids his age learned long division. He spent afternoons in workshops, evenings reading manuals and sketching designs. He still remembered the streets, still greeted people no one else noticed. The billionaire visited rarely. When he did, he never brought gifts, only questions. "What are you curious about now? What do you think happens if we change this?" One afternoon, Evan finally asked, "Why did you really let me drive that day?" The billionaire thought for a moment. "Because I thought I was untouchable. And you reminded me I wasn't." Years later, at a small track outside the city, Evan stood beside a prototype vehicle, sleek, efficient, designed to be affordable. His name was printed modestly on the project plaque. The billionaire watched from a distance, no longer the center of the story. He never was. The joke that day had ended the moment Evan touched the wheel. What followed wasn't luck. It wasn't charity. It was recognition, and the quiet power of giving someone a chance without laughing at them first.